Hi, this is Tim Clark, End Times Matrix News, and we're continuing on with Anthony Patch, author of Diamonds. It's a great read if you want to get a crash course in all things related to the mathematics and science behind CERN. It's a nice fictional story, and his little his little primer that goes with it is really good about the science behind it. Today's show is called Holographic Beast, and that's going to be exciting. All kinds of good things in there. And we're going to go ahead and jump into the show. Chris has some ancient Egyptian history for us. We're going to go from ancient Egypt all the way into CERN. And then we're going to have Anthony's reaction off of Chris's great research of interesting items that she's found. So whenever Chris is ready, we're going to transition over to her screen, and we're going to highlight it so that we can go straight to her videos. So Chris, you tell me when you're ready. All right. And we're going to go over to Chris's stuff right now. I'm highlighting. We're going into our tunnel vision, which is a trademark of Google+. And go ahead, Chris.
All right, so I've done a presentation, and this is going to be on kind of direct.
Everything's highlighted, right? We all got the highlighted box just so that we have the YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
Okay, and so I did this presentation about the Mark of the Beast, and most people are familiar with the 9/11 gate and the IXXI. And that does play a part of a lot of the symbolism that we're going to be looking at. But the main focus here today is Ptah and how he references to Tubal-Cain and many other ancient deities after the flood and the resurrection of Osiris. So XXI means 21, and it is in reference to the world. And it also is in reference to Saturn and the wheel in the sky. And here we have some symbolism here that means Jehovah Elohim, and it also means angels. It means it's in reference to the fallen angels, because the letters Yod, and I'll show you a different slide after this, but Yod means the phallus in the Hebrew language, and Heve means the uterus, and the uterus is connected to ancient Egypt, and some of the symbolism and the letters also are in reference to some of the deities in Egypt. And actually, Ptah is a German word, and I'll get into more of that too with Ptah and his German words, but so that's kind of where we get the male and the female all over the world, where they worship the phallus and the obelisk, or the yoni and the black stone, and the female aspect, male, female, fallen angels worshiping Elohim. It kind of goes along with the Kabbalah and the 7 chakras and everything. But here's the Shin letter, and here's the symbolism is the Vulcan. It also is in reference to the number 21. So this is the Shin letter, and we've kind of gone over that before on the show. And the Shin letter is also the other Telfan. Let me see if I have that slide here. Here it is. This is the one that they have now, that they wear, the Kabbalistic Jews wear, and this is the one to come. They call this the world to come. And so I want to explain how this is the 4th Shin, and this is the world to come, and this Shin represents Ptah and the resurrection of kind of like Jupiter, which was Saturn in the Egyptian. So the Zayin is the 4th Vav. It's the Shin, which is reserved to the 4th Shin, which is reserved for the world to come. The angel Samael is related to the mystery of Zayin, and you can read that in the Zohar. So he is connected to this 4th Shin, which is the seventh letter in the Hebrew alphabet. Here's the Hebrew alphabet. Here's the Shin letter. Here the Vav means 6. So on the Shin, it's 666. And then the world to come is the Zayin. And Ptah, this is his name. And I don't know if you've seen this symbol before, but this symbol is in a lot of time travel information, in alchemy, and so this is Ptah's name. This is the dome of the womb it's the mother's womb, or the earth, and this is the DNA, which is the letter H. And just know that this H is the letter Shin, because the letter Zayin is also the letter H. And these are letters that we're looking at in English, but here in the Hebrew, it's the Z, and it's the Zayin letter, but it's also H, and it means DNA. In this particular picture here, this is the Earth, this is the cube, which is his first letter, which is a reference to Saturn, and this is the womb of the Earth, and this is the triangle pyramid. At the top is the moon, and I know that has a lot to do with CERN, with the particles and stuff too, but at the top of the triangle in the Giza pyramid, this is 2016 in their calendar, and here is 2012. So this is the Mayan long count, and this is the eye of Horus, the eye of Satan. It's on our dollar bill, and so the calendar that starts in 1776 from the Mayan, and the Giza pyramid ends in 2016. It's a phenomenal calendar, but that's in another show, and we've done many shows on it already. But just interesting how Ptah's name is connected to that. Ptah, here his picture is. Here he is as I'm Hotep, which is a reversal of Ptah, and this is Osiris. So he represents Jupiter, which is the resurrection of Osiris after the flood. Here's some pictures. Here's the Ogdo. This is before this is after the flood, and these are the 4 frogs and the 4 snakes, and they merged with the Anim, which are the 9. And I don't know if you watch Star Trek or know the person who created Star Trek, but he says he has connections with people that are in connection with the 9, which are the universal guides.
That was Gene Roddenberry.
Yeah, that's his name. And so this is after the flood. This is Amon, Jupiter, and this is the wire that he wears. They all have bull tails because Ptah represents the Apis bull, and I have some more pictures to show you on that. The leg of the bull is Khonsu, which is Dionysus and the 7 Pleiades, and this is what he represents. So Ptah and Khonsu and Horus are all connected together with this resurrection, and so is Set with the resurrection of Osiris. Here's the back of Ptah. The back of the Ptah is Isis. They are connected together. Here is her. This is Isis as Mari, and this is the back of her head with the box. She has a rod that goes all the way down her back too, but they're connected to each other. And this is the Apis bull that Ptah represents. And here's part of the resurrection also. This is Neith. This is her symbol. This is the Aleph symbol, and this is her war goddess symbol. Dionysus carried that symbol with a pine cone at the top, and Osiris's wand is a pine cone with 2 snakes wrapped around it. It's the same symbol here as the Fel. You see the wheel. This is the wheel in the sky. It's also a sex magical symbol. which here is the phallus and this is kind of like the Shin letter with the phallus of Osiris here at the Vatican. Mm-hmm. And so that's that. And this is the Star of Horus around it. So, you know, it's quite a lot to get into, but there is a crossing of DNA. If you notice the bird and the snake on King Tut, King Tut also represents Khufu, and Khufu is the one with the solar boat. This is Amenhotep at the top, the third. And he also, Tubal-Cain also represents the Freemasons. They worship him, and he also represents Mithra. And Mithra is the lion head. He represents Samael also because Samael had 4 faces: the ox, the lion, the man, and the eagle. So he represents all of these things. It's very confusing because when they did the resurrection, it was like a spiritual thing. And he represents different gods at different times in history. And if we think about Jesus when he was born and he was in the earth and Satan tempted him, Satan was able to come and tempt him. And he was also able to enter Judas also. So these demons were actually free to do these things, you know, back then with the Ogdod. And the Ennead back then. So there's a long story about Osiris and how that was done with the resurrection of Jupiter or whatever. But they are. It does have to do with the Kabbalah. If I can find that slide, I'm so sorry. Here it is. So here's the beginning and the end. Here's the ox head, which represents the Aleph, and this is the Ta, and or the Tab, and here it is here represented above the earth. This is the earth. This is the moon. This is the sun. This is hell. This is Saturn, and this is 3, 6, 9. Saturn, sun, moon. That might not mean a lot to some people, but if you remember the letters that I was showing you earlier on the what the angel letters mean here, mm-hmm. They mean Adonai, Elohim, Yahweh. They mean a lot of names because they're angels. But this is like the spinal cord here when you stack them up. And they are like musical harmonics. They're magical numbers that have to do with the celestial realms and the vortex and the travels that they did. But these are their Antichrist symbols, and then the one is reserved that we talked about that represents Tubal-Cain. And Tubal-Cain is the bloodline of Cain, and anyone can look up the Freemasons and how they worship him. Ptah is a German name. He is known as Tubal-Cain to the Freemasons. To the Egyptians, he was Cheops and Khufu. In Greek, he was Dionysus, which is the shin of the bull. And in English, he's Vulcan. He made the lightning bolts, and he is actually Zeus. This is Marduk with his lightning bolts. This is Cheops. There's another piece to this show that we'll do later that ties into Heshaput, which is also a male-female Egyptian that ties into these things. But if you look here, here's also Poseidon, Enlil, which is Marduk. He's also Thoth and Shiva wearing the leopard skin. See, they're both wearing leopard skin, and they're all holding the tridents. Mm-hmm. And that means that represents the lightning. It also represents DNA and the caducees. Here's a priest. This is Ptah with his tassel with his thread. This means third strand DNA, and even the priests or the cardinals, they wear this on their backs just like the Egyptians did. They actually have a lot of the same priestly duties that they do just like the Egyptians and the Levites did over time. And here's the Shiva dancer doing the diamond dance, and she's carrying the lightning bolt too. And here's CERN with her dancing in the middle of that. Here's another reference to the DNA that symbolizes Thoth and Enki, which is his brother. And here is the magic cube. This is the Kabbalah and how it connects to the Mem, the Aleph, the Shin. And I believe that CERN has these symbols inside of all of their information. It's tied to all of these things. I have a picture here on CERN. This is a muon. Anthony, is it an atom or is it, what is it actually, a muon?
It is a quantum particle that is it's smaller than the Higgs boson. It's like a quark. It's in the same realm or size or energy level as quarks, like we talked about. Quark gluons, which form strangelets. The muon is in that same classification. These are elementary particles, smaller than an atom.
Okay, so it does reference to Venus because it's a translation to the M and the mu. Muon means mu in Greek, and that is the Latin M, and it equals to 13. And does it have something to do, in the Mem letter, does it have something to do with the light bouncing off the moon?
I don't know anything about that.
Okay. I was reading just a little bit upon that, and we'll have to go into more detail as we learn together here.
Yeah,
but I wanted to show you that we were talking about the old system with the Egyptians and how they did their CERN technology and DNA. And I have a picture here. Here is the Ankh circuit where the coils and the switch. And this is reminding me of the quantum computer switch, the on-off. It's like a dual switch.
Right.
And here is the Shin ring. This is who Shiva she dances in the Shin ring, the ring of fire, which is the which represents the universe in the Kabbalah. And here is an electric field. This is the staff, and you can see the electric field that goes around the staff and the frequencies.
They call that a toroidal field.
Okay.
Same thing that surrounds the planet.
Yeah, I've noticed that. That I've seen pictures of that. Here's the Shin ring. Here's Nebhuru. Here's Marduk. Here is Marduk. Here's this is Inanna, and they're wearing their phallus hats. You know, Saturn was castrated, and Jupiter was resurrected in his place, and that's why they had the Saturn temples, and then later on they had the Jupiter temples. Here's the two snakes here, and here's the pine cone here, and here's Hermes as how do you say his name, Tim? Bacchus?
His name is Bacchus. They used to celebrate orgy kind of things, which are called Bacchanalians events.
Yeah.
It was kind of a group. It's kind of a group activity to invoke the spirit to fall upon them. The Bacchae that Tom Horn wrote about and some other folks, basically, it was pretty much exactly like what happened with the French Revolution when the Freemasons in the French Revolution, they seemed to become have a group possession where they went into a blood orgy with the guillotines and wearing the entrails on their heads as hats, and you know, they just went into a full bloodlust, and that seems to be what the Bacchanalian has been associated with, real bloodlust kind of stuff when the spirit falls on a group of people. So of course we know what that spirit is, but
yeah, that's what the guy that just passed away from Star Trek, he explained that they aren't supposed to look at the chanting and the symbol at the Jewish churches, but he peeked and he saw the symbol, and it is the Shin letter, and he said that it's because a spirit will come over them, and if they look, it might kill them, is what he said.
So that's Leonard Nimoy, who played Spock, was from Vulcan. The last Star Trek movie, they have a real elaborate Vulcan scene in the crater of the lava blowing up all around them. Vulcan's associated with Satan and God of Fire, hell, that kind of stuff. So it's interesting. It's interesting symbolism.
Tubal-Cain is also Vulcan. He also represents Vulcan. In different languages, he's called different things, So I was just going to show this to the IXXI Jesuit rings that they wear. And here's the Egyptians. They have these magic numbers, 3, 6, 9, 12, which represents the 12 in the zodiac, which is actually 13. But here they are, these gods in the Ankh, which it means the life to them, and here's Osiris. So, and I think I've kind of went over this before. This is actually one of the showing the resurrection. So when Saturn was castrated, he became a woman, which is Venus, and Venus represents Lucifer. And so Isis and Ptah became one. His bloodline, they have to continue to connect to that bloodline, just like Nimrod. Nimrod was also Marduk, and the reason he was because he was infested with a demon, just like Judas. Judas was infested with a demon. So so we went over
the Kabbalists of Hollywood. They also include the Venus Isis character, Lucifer character in the feminine, as they like to use the name Lucy. So you'll see in the Lego movie they'll use the name Lucy as the wild child, and you also see in the recent movie Lucy, which is also the feminine Lucifer. So
yeah. So this letter Yod which actually means the phallus, and the Aleph is the first letter. There's the Aleph and the Taw, the beginning and the end of that. And so just interesting, to keep this in mind with our later shows going over these things. But Ptah's, his symbol is actually DNA, and that's what it represents, because he's Tubal-Cain, and that bloodline of Cain has a lot to do with the end times and the Antichrist, because that's the bloodline that they used over and over to try to resurrect the Antichrist.
Do you think that H is, of course, it looks like the helix of DNA, but can that also represent the obelisk that we see in Washington? Because we have the dome there. If we have the dome, then the obelisk must mean also something to do with DNA or generation, the phallus. Do you think that helix there is in the construction of buildings, as the Freemasons do? We know the Saturn cube is used with the Kaaba, and we see Kaabas all over the place. But then we see places like the Vatican and Washington, we see the dome and the obelisk, and also we talked about the obelisk being out in front of Berkeley too. So maybe that helix is connected to that too.
I'm glad you asked that, because it does. The Zayin letter also represents a phallus. It does. It represents the number 7. But if you look it up in the transition of that letter does actually mean phallus also. There's a lot of meanings to it, but that's one of the meanings of it, and because it had to do with the resurrection of Osiris, and that's, in that picture here, this is Venus, and this is Isis, and this is from the Brooklyn Museum. This is actually from that museum, and she is connected to Ptah, and she also represents Upper and Lower Egypt here with this hat.
Can you
and it also
this
means
symbol?
As above, so below.
Can you explain the symbol in the upper right, the PNX?
Yeah, this is the wheel. In the center of the wheel is basically called the sex magic, and this is, you see it here too. This is the phallus and the other part here, and so this is the female, and this is the male, and this is Horus the star, and that's part of the resurrection of Osiris, because there was always a battle between Set and Horus for the throne, and the gods, obviously they picked Horus to be the one who was going to, and he's identical with Marduk too. But this symbol here represents the pineal gland at the top. It represents, basically, I would have to say that it represents the Kabbalah.
Could that also be the Ptah, the P for Ptah, and then the X for the Venus, and then you have the I'm just curious with the P aspect. That's why I'm just asking real quick.
Yeah, this is the wheel in the sky, and it represents this whole. It represents this whole Kabbalah here. All the planets. These are planets, and it also represents this here, the universe.
Interesting.
Yeah, it represents this whole entire thing, the whole entire universe. But
so why are we moving towards this 9/11 symbol and moving towards CERN with this Shiva thing? Why? Yeah, we're going from Ptah all the way to Shiva to CERN.
This eye right here, we're in the XXI, and the eye, this is the reserved for the new world. This is the Zayin symbol right here. This is what they are needing to open up the gate. And in the center here is the hexagon of Saturn.
I gotcha.
Yeah, so we've talked about that. I think that Ptah, his symbol represents the spark that the Vatican is looking for, the spiritual spark.
Right, and that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, this is the symbol for Sirius, and you can see the womb is part of the symbol, and this is part for Ptah.
Can I interrupt? Can I interrupt for a moment?
Yeah.
Let's go to the letter T and the dome that you have there. That is also above ground at CERN. You may have seen that. It is a wooden structure. It's supposed to be a presentation hall, museum, gathering place, but it has a spiral helical shaped staircase within it, but it sits right above ground at the headquarters, that exact shape.
So we got the phallus and the womb together then, basically, if you got the helix inside of it.
That's right.
Yeah, I didn't, I mean, I've seen the picture, I didn't put it together though, but yeah, I've seen that picture. But just interesting, his name and how the Freemasons worship him, and how he's such a mystery, because his DNA is actually like a portal for the underworld to come into the into the earth. It's like they used his DNA for the resurrection of Saturn after the flood. So that's just, interesting. If you know the story about Uranus and Saturn and Jupiter, and how they kept castrating the mythical figures, and that has a lot to do with the snake that eats the tail, because Saturn represents Uranus as well, and that's what Mithra in the right here, this is Uranus, and this is also Saturn. He represents the whole thing, because he castrated Uranus, and he took over, and this is the primordial egg in the universe.
It's also a mitochondria.
Oh, that's true.
That's the mitochondria surrounding a cell, human cell.
Wow.
Yeah, if you see this right here, this is the key in his hand. And here's the caduceus down here, and here's the rooster, and here's the pine cone. So that's just another interesting here, but it is a Saturn symbol here, and this is he on his back. I believe he has a goat on his back. We can't see his back, and I didn't get a picture of that.
This is the year of the goat, as well as the year of light. Chinese year of the goat.
Yeah. Do you want me to show that video, Tim?
Yeah, let's go ahead and show the video. It's to me the video is very interesting because it's very connected to CERN. From Round Eye Saturn, he did a great job. He always does nice work with all his video productions, but he has a commercial in one of his productions that Chris is going to show. It's related to it is related to CERN. So whenever you're ready.
When we go to this commercial, a cell phone commercial, remember the barren land. We start in the barren land, which is the womb, the barren womb. Psalm tells us that the rebellious dwell in the barren land, and that's the barren land with the womb there. So here you're starting at that level, that dimension. In this commercial, just watch what happens. This is all to do with CERN and how CERN is going to do this as well. So the white horse, the collide of light particles, our friend here is holding the compass time circle. You see how they're both in white. It's in the barren land and the collide of light. But watch what he does. He drops the compass. He drops. So you've got the compass and the square there. He's dropping time and space. And the scroll, interestingly, but the time and space, he's dropping. The great architect is dropping time and space, the sacrifice of the ox, for this transfiguration, Big Bang type thing to happen, which is all CERN stuff. Boom. The new Huawei. You see how that's...
So that actually that was we put the link in our video. So if you want to look at that video again, that you can. But just the presentation that I showed based on the symbolism and the letter of Ptah and round Saturn's eye was just talking about how he represents the great architect. And that's who they worship as their creator god, because Cain was Samuel's son, in my opinion, and he was resurrected. He was Osiris, and I did a blog on that with Cain and a lot of historical documents that I attached to it. But just to show that letter and the symbolism and what it means, and that video to kind of give us in our mind what it means with the spark. I know that Anthony has a lot of in-depth knowledge of these things I wish that I had, and I'm trying to get up to speed. I have no idea how long it'll take me to understand all of these things, but that is just, to me, that is the spark, that is the spiritual particle that the Pope has called for, that he wants. And in my opinion, this is what they're wanting to do, is they want to resurrect the Antichrist through a holographic quantum computer. And they're looking for this particle so they can do that. And so we have a lot of questions for Anthony today on the quantum computer and how would that work if they find the spirit particle. How would they find it, and then they would put it into the quantum computer, and how does the quantum computer compare to the computer system that we have today? Would it be to where people just won't need a computer anymore to connect to the quantum computer? They won't need devices anymore. They won't need the phones or the computers. So I know that was a whole long question, but those are some thoughts that I had.
So we have all our boxes unhighlighted, right? so that we can go back and forth? We transitioned out of the...
Yes.
Okay.
How do we unhighlight?
Just click on whatever. If you see a box that has
We're
the
good. We're good
white...
to go. It's all fixed now. It's fine.
Is it fine? Okay. Okay, go ahead, Anthony. I'm sorry for interrupting. I'm just trying to get it right for our video part of the show.
Let's take the last part of your long question and the connection. Do we need computers, phones, iPhones, whatever, to connect? If we go to the positive side, that we're still going to be around and that we're still going to have access to technology, yes, there will be a connection devoid of any laptops, iPhones, or anything, in the sense that we will be connected to the hive electromagnetically. Essentially, our brains will have a direct electromagnetic connection with the computer system that will be running the world, which is basically the beast. What they're trying to do is to construct a system of control using supercomputers, in particular the adiabatic quantum computer, to control people. Now, we've talked about the modification of people through the modification of their DNA and also nanoparticles that are placed in our body through chemtrail or aerosolized spraying, vaccines, GMO foods. We have within our bodies already nanoparticles that will be used to control our thoughts, but also allows us to be connected through the electromagnetic spectrum, be it microwaves, extremely low frequency waves, or other variations to that. But it's not so much us saying, hey, I want to connect to the computer and ask a question or to talk to somebody else. It's much more of a one-way process that they are setting up, in which they are sending us control messages, thoughts, if you will, to control our behavior and to tell us what to do as a serf class within this overall hive mentality. So that's a component of your long question.
Okay. Yeah, it's real interesting, the quantum computer. It's mind-blowing. I mean, people really need to look at videos to understand what this computer is. It's not like the computer that we have now. It's separate than, it's a whole separate system. This whole
Can I give you a quick overview?
Oh, yes, please. Thank you.
If we have time. Just a quick overview. If you look at standard computers today, they're based on transistors, silicon chips. If you look at the new computer we're talking about, which is called an adiabatic quantum computer, you're talking about something that operates with qubits. These are not transistors. These are essentially a chip that functions on quantum entanglement and supersymmetry and superposition. And that's a long explanation and to take that all into account. But if you just picture, one has transistors, one has qubits. What we're moving towards with CERN is a computer system that will control all of the data, the portal, the DNA modification, the connection with Saturn. All of those mechanisms will be controlled through the adiabatic quantum computer using qubits, which reach out into another dimension, run a computational program, and then extract the answer back into our frame of reference, or our universe, or our dimension, if you will. So this is a complete departure. When we talk about supercomputers in our venue of discussions here, we are now talking about the adiabatic quantum computer. We are not talking about transistor-based supercomputers anymore. Specific to CERN and where we're going in the future is the adiabatic qubit-based supercomputer, and that is artificially intelligent.
Is it your assertion that we already have artificial intelligence with
Absolutely.
the 2048 model, that the computer that you mentioned in your book?
Yes. In fact, going back to 2010, the manufacturer, whom I won't name, publicly stated on their website, posted on their website, that by early 2015 they will achieve artificial intelligence. They did not cite the number, or the model number of the computer, but they said that it would have the equivalent processing power of all of the human brains on the planet, which is over 7 billion brains, combined into one single unit, one single computer. I did the math on it and extrapolated out from their models in 2010 out to early 2015 and came up with the number 2048, which is based on Shor's algorithm, which goes into cryptology, which was the primary reason early on for developing the adiabatic quantum computer, was to develop a new form of coding, secret coding, cryptology, based on Shor's algorithm, which for the first time was cracked by this computer. No other transistor-based computer was capable of cracking Shor's algorithm. They created an entirely new system of coding, secret coding, if you will, for communication purposes. And this goes into the new Internet 2, ESNet 5, what's coming up. But the 2048 model, they announced, I sent it to you, I think about 4 weeks ago, and I was laughing at the time because they came out with it. They said, this is our new 2048. It cost $10 million. They didn't cite who the customer was. We can all imagine who the customer was, but in essence, it was CERN that purchased the computer. This announcement of the Model 2048, however, did not include the statement of artificial intelligence. That was removed back in mid-2010 after it was on their website for 6 months. They pulled the artificial intelligence announcement from that and has not come back. But it is artificially intelligent.
Okay, so we have artificial intelligence. We have Hawking and other folks talking about artificial intelligence, the pros and cons of it, and the threat to humanity, because we are quite an irrational group of people, that a computer that is artificially intelligent would not think, they would think we have error in our code somewhere if we have an artificially intelligent computer. So we created our own destroyer, our own Shiva, to destroy us and recreate. This is the whole thing with the Shiva-CERN connection that I've noticed, is that Shiva is a destroyer of worlds and a creator of worlds, in the sense that she must destroy to create.
And that is something that when people are talking about CERN, and they always put up, Shiva and all of that, they fail to go to the part B of the explanation, which is the creating of a new world, a new universe. You have to destroy to create new. This is the whole New Age agenda. This is the Luciferian construct and deception. And he wants to destroy what God created. We can talk about the DNA. We can talk about the physics of the planet, the physics of the universe. He wants to take it all and start over.
Is that why the computer is kind of like an evolutionary nature type computer? They can put in, it's kind of mind blowing when I see the information. They're putting phosphorus atoms. Venus is made out of phosphorus, and they're putting it inside of this quantum computer, and they can get answers very quickly. It's like this system we have. You can't even compare it to the quantum computer that they have. It's based on nature and evolution. I guess that ties in with the Luciferian agenda and the Kabbalah and how they tap into the spiritual dimensions or whatever. It's kind of like, how the holographic beast will become one day when they find this spirit particle, which they could find it any day. And we know that CERN's starting up, and this is their reason. They want to find this spirit particle, so that way they can complete agenda for the New World Order, so that they can get everybody to take a mark or plugged into this computer. I'm not sure if they're going to show us this new system and everybody is gonna go crazy over it and follow after the beast with amazement, like the Bible says. Is this part of it? Is this some kind of new system that they'll be showing one day, and then people are going to marvel and follow after it and fall for these tricks in order to be controlled at some point? Because just like in the garden, when Adam and Eve took on that tree and that DNA, they took on that mind of Satan, and he gained control. That's why Jesus came and died for us, so that way he could free us from these things. So interesting that this has to do with our pineal gland, and it has to do with connecting to this holographic computer and being controlled by this holographic human type beast, which we know Satan. He's a cherubim. He has that DNA of animal and human. He was an ox, a lion, an eagle, and a man, the four faces of the world. And even on the world card, you see the Shiva dancer in the middle, which she's hiding part of herself because she's male and female both. But yeah, I know that that has a lot to do with it, with CERN having the Sanskrit glass plates and the music and the harmonics, just like the Egyptians did, in order to bust through some type of dimension, so that way they can have a new age and a new dimension and be in this, which is not what they think it is.
Right. The glass plates, just for a moment, very quickly. Okay. The program that I participated in last night, that I mentioned before we came on the air, new piece of information regarding the glass plates that was shared with me by the host. Apparently they are taking those sheets, those animal skins, the parchments, with the Sanskrit, the Chinese, the Hebrew, the ancient languages that are at CERN. They're not just stable displays. Certainly they are part of rituals, performing rituals. But what he shared with me is they are actually taking those parchments, those letters, and placing them, as he described it, at the point of collision, when the particles come together and the energy is generated. They are placing those so that they are illuminated by the energy, the particles and the energy coming from the collisions. So picture this: they're holding up a sheet with ancient writing on it that is now being bombarded by the energies generated by the collisions within the Large Hadron Collider. Now, I had never run across that in my research, so I toss it to you, Chris, to see if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, I know that Nimrod wore Adam's clothing, and it was kind of like magical clothing, and he had a lot of power with that clothing. I'm wondering, is that the animal skins? Because I showed a picture earlier of Shiva with a leopard skin and sea-shell soft, and so just that could be a possibility, that they have that clothing in their possession to be able to get that.
Let's put the pieces together real quick. You're looking at your Hebraic alphabet, the numbers, the symbols, what they represent. Those are on those sheets. If the sheets are the clothing, if they're not just merely animal skins, or they may be a mixture of, they contain DNA. So if they are providing energy to the old DNA, what does that say to you?
Well, it says to me that we're producing the Golem, basically, with Emmett, the talisman on him, the talisman of the Golem, truth, to animate the unanimated.
Yes, resurrection.
Resurrection. The main theme that I've been tracking this whole year with shows and everything. Yeah, I see that as far as knowing the occult world, the use of symbols and energized symbols is attunements that they use in rituals. Such when people get an attunement in the occult arena, they get a symbol placed upon their forehead, usually a crown chakra, right on top of your head. And they'll inscribe it with the finger of the person doing the attunement and the energy released to imprint that symbol into your DNA.
Mm-hmm.
So this shooting energy through symbols into DNA sounds familiar to me with what they already do in the New Age world of energy work, and with the New Age, Old Age, pagan rituals, same thing. So with the, how does that relate? How do these sheets relate to holograms then? How do we use holograms in DNA and these sheets?
Well, what I'm seeing here is that they are using those as a pattern, as a model, much like if you were, pardon me, take a perforated sheet of paper with a pattern of holes and you shine a light through it. On the other side, you generate an image. That's a simplistic way of talking about lasers and holograms, using mirrors and a ruby, a gemstone, even a diamond for diffraction. And so what I'm seeing here is really they are trying to create a pattern of DNA by shooting the energy through that, much like I just described with a piece of paper that's perforated. When we talk about the Vatican and the spirit particle, and I mentioned last time that I strongly believe that those are the strangelets which occurred at the Big Bang before the formation of the Higgs boson, the God particle. So we're talking about a particle that was created first, before the God particle. So you have the spirit being generated. I believe that in these collisions, the strangelets that are being produced are actually going through, they are hitting these sheets when they're, quote, being illuminated, thus creating the pattern of the ancient DNA that they can then digitize and then construct using the proteins, the building block chemicals that form the proteins that form our DNA into a helical pattern, in this case a triple helix, the three-stranded DNA. So you have a holographic image that then creates DNA. The DNA then replicates into the image of a beast, a freestanding person or creature that no longer is dependent upon the use of a laser to project the image. It's a freestanding living entity that you can touch, and it's alive.
So it's kind of like they're coming from another dimension to be able to come into our dimension, and so that's why they're kind of like a hologram, but you can touch them at the same time because they're not human. I mean, they're not, you know, they're different than we are. They're evil, fallen angel type thing. So that's why they look like the way they do, because I think that their DNA is different than our DNA. So I guess just like Cain, his DNA was both, you know, from Samuel. So I guess that's why I get that picture. But you know, we were talking about the Shiva dancer and how she does the diamond dance, and she does her hand, each hand symbol means something different. It's like a ritual in the ring of fire, which represents the universe. And she's also Shiva and Kali. They're the same thing. They're one being. They represent Thoth as well. But Hathor and Thoth in history, and the Egyptians, they did that dance too. It was called the Hathor-Thoth dance. And so I guess back then when they did that same thing as far as the resurrection of Saturn through Jupiter, because as above, so below, and they did that, that's how they did it, was some kind of dance that they did then. So that kind of compares to now, and they represent Kali and Shiva as well.
With this holographic beast stuff, how long would it take to grow a full-size DNA beast?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I mean, we got the Pope showing up the day afterward, so do they already have something grown that just needs a spirit infusion or something?
That's a very likely possibility. However, remember, they need the strangelets, and those have to be produced at a threshold energy level of 10 TeV, and that will not be achieved until May of this year. March, this month, they're going to 7. In May, June, in that time frame, they're going to go to over 10. They'll probably hit 13 mid-year, and 14 around September that we've been discussing. So they need the energy level to create sufficient quantities of strangelets to create this holographic image.
Now, we won't be around to report on this, will we?
Well, in terms of our belief in the rapture, the pre-trib rapture, I don't think we will be, because we are not here to participate in the image of the beast.
Right. And also, Internet 1, as of the SCC coming in now and transitioning to ESNet 5, which is Internet 2, which will be the Beast system. I guess this is the 2048 run Beast net.
Exactly.
Okay, so we got the. It's just interesting because we've always had this fight between, well, there's a whole nother show, but the point of the original Christian scientists, Pascal, Newton, and these guys trying to explain the universe and understand God through his creation. Then we got this illuminated antichrist humanist scientific community that has sought the serpent stuff from, I guess, the Nazi history, the spread of the paperclip guys around the globe with this kind of corrupted science of fallen angel science or whatever it's called, and now we have this convergence of the Fourth Reich on this CERN event with creating the beast. Now, that's my opinion, of course, but I think it's kind of close to what's going on. I'm trying to think. As far as the free thinkers, the independent news, to be able to report on anything related to this topic, doesn't it seem to you? I believe, you believe, more than likely there's a rapture event in the short future. That means the restrainer is removed and all hell breaks loose, because without the restrainer, the beast system can just rampage, and that will probably happen. So I don't think, we know the system has to be created so he can walk in and just sit down on the throne. That's happened. And so this September event, I don't know what to think of it. I don't know where this holographic DNA monster has been, if he's already been, what do you want to say, held in stasis in some kind of goo tube, ready to be animated, you know.
Well, we have discussed, and I do present it in my books, that there already are soulless creatures. There are essentially third-strand DNA created human forms that lack a soul. And when the portal is open and the spirits come through, they will have host bodies awaiting them. Essentially, that is Satan's army that he wants to create here on Earth. And
the third strand DNA, okay, I understand one strand of DNA is usually 23 chromosomes from one parent.
Right.
And then the other one's 23 from the other parent. which gives us the 46, basically.
Right.
And then we're adding another 23 to this to make it a 69, or what? How would you say that?
I would say it would add to 66.
Why not? That was a good year, 66. I must say,
But the third strand is really artificial DNA, and the video that I sent to you that was produced in 2009.
Yeah.
And that was presented at Ames Research Laboratory in the Silicon Valley. Now, NASA Ames, in that video, they were talking about producing artificial DNA from scratch from the basic 4 chemicals that comprise our proteins for the purpose of being able to go to outer space without radiation damaging the DNA.
Mm.
So if you are creating DNA from scratch, and it is a third-strand helical DNA, who are you growing from the DNA, and who are you then ostensibly sending into outer space to travel to the distant planets and stars? I mean, that is the agenda of Ames in support of NASA. Why are Ames and NASA talking about artificial proteins and DNA? What has that got to do with anything? Why do you have the connection and the funding from NASA for DNA research? It's certainly not to travel out into space, as they're saying in their public forum. So that video I sent you is fairly old, but it gives you an idea of where the technology was back then in the ability to create artificial DNA and now take it forward to today, to the present, and you can imagine how far along they are. Recognize that even in 2009, what they were talking about was information that had already been in existence for 10 to 15 years. Remember, we only see the tip of the iceberg. They will only say in a public forum what has been in existence for 10 or 15 or more years. So the construct of third-strand DNA, in my estimation, was achieved over 20 years ago.
Well, I think you would have to, in order to have the Beast system laid out and prepared with the chipping, whether it's the RFID chips with the Mark of the Beast technology, yeah, I think they've had to already trial run all that stuff and have it in working order for mass distribution.
Right.
So we know that it's a lot of people have talked about Obamacare and pointed out things in Obamacare with certain loose language with certain types of implantable technologies, without spelling it out exactly.
Right.
And so we see that it's all built, it's all sitting there. It's just ready to roll out. My question was, what I found fascinating about the 2008 video stuff that you sent me is that how do you pronounce his last name?
Ventnor.
Ventnor. Okay, I want to do it right. Dr. Ventnor was talking about just handing over to the AI robots to sequence strands however they saw fit, because it would be much faster than we would.
Right.
But he was calling them robots without calling them AI. Was your point?
Well, that was my point. Yes, using coded language always, talking about robots and showing the little diagram of the robotic arm moving components in the laboratory to build the DNA. And really, we're talking about artificially intelligent computers that are sorting through the genome patterns, coming up with the proper arrangement and sequencing of the DNA according to what they want to build.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, at what point do you decide just to hand complete control of your reality over to something you have no idea of what it's going to do to you? These people, these intelligent scientists, these illuminated ones, have to make such an insane leap in logic to hand over the keys to the reality in their lives to something that has a high probability of killing them. And they think it's doing the Shiva dance, where we're old evolution, and so what if we get wiped out? There's going to be something bigger and better. And it's kind of it's kind of a Darwinian psychopathy going on here. You know,
Yeah, it is truly psychopathic. And it shows you the level of deception that has occurred within the scientific community. And they operate in a compartmentalized world of research, each of them having a small slice of research that they focus on, and then that is added into the bigger overall agenda of what they're trying to achieve. So consequently, you have people that are oblivious to the overall agenda, they're oblivious to the impact upon humanity that their small slice of research has. And that goes into the mind of researchers, because they are only given a certain amount of funding for specific projects, grant money. And so they make that their entire focus of their living, breathing life is to that area of research, and don't stray beyond it because they don't have the funding to stray beyond it. That video was a classic example. There was a gentleman who asked a question, and his response, the doctor's response, was, "How much money do you have?" Remember that?
Yes. What do we call this? Scientific prostitution, or their science goes to the highest bidder?
It truly is.
Wow.
And so people will ask the question, well, like you did, why aren't these scientists concerned about the destruction of the human race, the takeover of AI, the destruction of the planet by strangelets or whatever else may be coming along, or CERN blowing up? It's because they are so entrenched in this. If you want to call it mind control or brainwashing, you could call it that. But they're so entrenched in a priesthood and a theology of science that completely removes them from everyday life that you and I are experiencing. They do not live in our community. They do not live in our world. Great example again is CERN. They live in a closed community. The outside world is denied access to their community for security reasons, and they are paid large amounts of money for which they pay no income tax. So they live in a cloistered world, much like monks doing research.
Yeah, no, I understand this. I understand it from the this divorce from your humanity type of mindset. This is why I was bringing up Pascal and Newton, because they were still humans doing scientific research to understand God and His creation. These people have divorced themselves from their origins of their creator to that we are just this Darwinian animal. We are animals, and we have reflexes and we have lifespan, but there's always an upgradable evolutionary superior out there somewhere. And
That's right.
it allows for Joseph Mengele to come to the forefront.
Yes.
This godfather of I'll say of CERN, the godfather of the Nazi paperclip. I'm sure there's others that we don't know about that were more into the mind control and the societal control mechanisms that they kept very hush hush because they run off of all these control mechanisms. But this elite group of people divorced from their humanity end up destroying humanity.
Yes, and that is because, again, they believe that in the destruction they can rebuild. Remember the destruction of the Twin Towers and our president signing the white painted beam, okay? They're talking about being able to come back stronger. They believe that scientists, we're talking about them specifically right now, they believe that they will achieve immortality. They've been promised immortality. They've been promised that if they will do this, that they will become like gods. And in that video I sent you, in reading between the lines, that's what the doctor was talking about. That they can virtually create biologically with artificial biology. We're talking about artificial DNA. They can create anything that they want biologically. This is what he was talking about from a financial standpoint. He actually came right out and said, this will be the new moneymaker. This will be the new market.
He did say that, didn't he?
Yes. So we're moving from the industrial age to the information age to the nanoparticle biology. The age of biology is what we are in right now. We have moved beyond computers and IT, the information age. We are now in the biology age. And he was saying that, and this is again back in 2009, this is where all the money will be made in the future, because you can make anything in our world biologically. And we talk about 3D printers and printing of human organs and all of that being done, and creating bodies, an entire human body with a 3D printer. But not to get off into a tangent on that, but the essence of what is going on with these scientists and those that are funding them and leading them, they truly believe that they will not die. Doesn't matter if they destroy the environment through chemtrails and radiation and pollution and GMO foods, because their DNA will be modified. That's what they've been promised. They've been promised that they will have their DNA that exists today modified into a third-strand DNA and move to an entirely different life form. And that life form will not die.
So if your DNA is a 6/6 chromosome combination, and God has us at a 4/6. I'm trying to think of the sequence here.
Yeah.
And of course, anything that takes the mark of the beast must be transformed Gaborum style into the 6/6 chromosome structure. Would that not be?
Right.
So everybody's going to be Nimrod as far as becoming the genetic child of the beast.
But they'll have different mentalities. Of course, the scientists and the elite will not allow the mass population to achieve godhood status that's equivalent to them. They have to have a serf class.
So is this where the blue bloods come in? They want to be the Olympians that sit up on their Elysium, looking down at the peasants who have programmed in death dates programmed into their DNA.
Well, certainly death dates could be. I understand the cultural reference, the movies that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. But yeah, certainly that can be done. That's not an issue as far as an endpoint. But yeah, they essentially want to go back to that old system of the Greek gods looking down upon those that they care for and tend, like a flock, like a herd.
Well, I guess they're already living up to it with all the incest and molestation and murder and every other crooked thing. They already got that down. So now I guess they just need immortality to go along with it to live up to that.
Sure.
Let's see. All right. I think the NSA interceded on Chris and kicked her off. That's what I'm reading.
I've seen her for a while.
Yeah, I got an email update, and looks like they kicked her off the feed here. So what she's got a link to here. What we can do is just wrap up for this session.
Yeah.
And because it's not right not to continue on without her.
Exactly.
Let me see if. So let's go ahead and we'll call this a show. I'll stop the broadcast and we'll pick up. We'll get back in touch with Chris and get back together there. Okay. Thank you, Anthony.
Yeah. Good.